friend of mine, a brother here, Chaz, is going to come up and share with you just for a few moments his testimony about how God has been good to him and what God is doing in his life and the continuation of what God is doing. How many know that it is a process, like Deanna stated earlier, and so we all in that process. Even though you see us, and we all in the process as well. We're going through something as well. It might not be the same thing you're going through, but we're going through something. So the thing that connects us is the fact that we all deal with problems, and we will always face problems. Let's welcome Chaz to come forward, amen.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Appreciate it. Hey guys, I'm a big believer in looking back in the journey and in the process, and just what has brought us to where we are. And I think it's good to reflect back on those things. And for me, the journey's been amazing. So the past 2.5 years, I've lived in Atlanta, Georgia. I actually ran into Lorenzo down at Dooley State Prison, probably I think 2.5 years ago, and it's a pretty dark time in my life. Just how it is being in prison and all that. So you just want to get out and go home. So just through that, there's been an influence on his life and my life. So I just want to talk a little bit about where I came from and just the process I went through, the journey, and the growth that's occurred for me. So I actually grew up in North Georgia. In a place called Dawson County, Georgia. If anybody knows where that is, it's about 45 minutes north of Atlanta. So I grew up in the mountains, and I was a kid that grew up in poverty. Didn't really have much growing up. I really had to, live on food stamps and hand-me-downs from rich families. My mom, she would work in a house. The rich folks would kind of give me the hand-me-downs. And, just being in that environment, it really has given me a different perspective on really being thankful for what I have nowadays. But so being raised up in North Georgia, there was a lot of just some country stuff going on. I enjoyed just kind of going to the river and jumping out of trees and rope swings and just getting in fights on dirt roads and things like that. And my mom, she was really impactful in my life about having me plugged into the First Baptist Church of Dawsonville, and made sure that I was being influenced by the Word of God from a very young age. In my house where I grew up, my mom and dad, they would fight a lot. There was a lot of domestic violence issues, a lot of screaming and yelling, and I started to act out in these ways as well with my sister that I grew up with. So we'd argue so much, like doors did not have hinges, the doors kind of swung open like old barn or something. But we really got at each other, and we there was no peace in my life. There was a lot of just tumultuous seasons that I went through as a young kid. So through that, my rebelliousness had actually ended up getting me involved in the gang activities and hanging out with some guys that I shouldn't hang out with, growing up, and so I ended up going down a really bad path. Just seeing my mom and dad kind of going through what they went through. They had a divorce at a young age. And my dad was really emotionally disconnected. He was really a guy that just kind of wanted to, in my eyes, just kind of be lazy and not work, and just really didn't have a good influence on my life. So I just say all that to say that it's important, the impact we have on our kids and all, to really be the anchor man to break the cycle of generational curses. And it kind of starts with you guys in here. I don't know if any of you have kids. I'm sure some of you do have kids. I don't personally have kids yet, but there are children that I work with that I think it's important that we as men rise up as men of God to influence the generations to come. So just saying that, it's really something that's been close to my heart, the way my father kind of treated me. He was emotionally disconnected. My dad was an alcoholic, and he would beat me, in a manner that was really just excessive, with belt buckles and switches and 2x4s sometimes. So I grew up with a lot of fear. I was a very scared young man, and I was used to backing down and running, and always cowering away in a corner. And my mom, she had that kind of influence on me as well. She was a little bit too excessive with the beating, so just started acting out in a really, really angry kind of way, and that anger would ultimately get the best of me. But going back just a little bit, at the age 7, I actually believed that there was a God. I believed in the man of Jesus Christ, but I really didn't take hold of that, So I was saved and baptized at the Baptist church, and then just going through life, and then having the mom and dad get divorced and all that. It really just started a downward spiral for me, to where that I really didn't take a hold of the salvation that I had accepted at a young age, and I didn't really know if I understood it completely, because if I would have understood it completely, I would have probably went down a different path. So about age 15 or so, 14, 15, I started to, it seems so simple, right? Smoke a little bit of weed. I started to smoke just a little joint here and there, and just started listening to some gangster rap music, some Bone Thugs and Harmony, some Tupac, and Eminem, and I started living the life. I started like acting out the lyrics, because garbage in, garbage out, right? And for me, it ended up getting pretty extreme. So I ended up acting out so bad that my mom and I decided for me to actually move into a place called Eagle Boys Ranch. And it's a Christian boys home up in Gainesville, Georgia area. So I moved to Eagle Ranch, and I lived there for about a year. And it was a Christian boys home that really started to transform my mind through the process. But I was very rebellious and wouldn't listen. So ultimately at Eagle Ranch, I ended up getting kicked out after threatening to kill my house parents. I wasn't really going to do it, but I threatened to, so they had to believe it. I was about 15 years old when that happened, and my mom and I wanted me to stay at the high school where I was at in Gainesville, because I'd already made some friends. It was my freshman year of high school, and we decided that she would actually drive me from Dawsonville, Georgia to Gainesville, Georgia every single day. It was 30 minutes away, just to keep me in the 9th grade with my friends. So one day at school, I actually got a call out to the principal's office, and I come out, and it was my brother. He was there. My brother Philip was there, and he says that Mom's been in an accident. We have to go to the emergency room. So we go to the emergency room, and we get there, and my mom is in the ER room, and she's like completely naked, and she had actually gotten in an accident at the high school, where I was supposed to be at in Dawson County, like right there at the intersection next to it. But I was 30 minutes away at another school because of my, and I don't blame myself for this. It's just that I had consequences to where that I had to go and do something that I probably wouldn't have had to do if I would have chose to go a different path. But my mom, she broke her neck. She had one of those halo vests on with the screws in the head for 3 months. She had broke her leg, broke 3 ribs, punctured a lung. So for me, it was just really like weird to see my mom in a wheelchair, and it was very difficult, to see like the screws in the head and the skull, So as a young man, I'm looking at this, and my mom had to battle through breast cancer through all this process, and I'm like, wow, man, she went through all that, but her faith was still so strong. So she had a really great influence on me. During that time, going on up, 15, 16, 17, 18, 17 years old, my mom, the cancer came back on her through the breast cancer, and she actually passed away 10 days after my 17th birthday. So she got majestic bone cancer, which is a bone cancer that just really took her life. She came back home and passed away. I actually, had my mom come back to the house, and when she passed away, the bed that she was laying in, I was sitting next to her, and I held her hand as the warmth went to cold out of her hand. So it was a difficult time for me, and I immediately went into a huge rebellious season to where that it led me to homelessness. So I went into homelessness. I was 17 years old. I was so rebellious, my family didn't want to have anything to do with me. I have 3 brothers and a sister. So I ended up getting a little bit of money after we sold the house. My sister sold the house. I got some money, bought a car, and bought some dope. I started, selling dope. I started, packaging some marijuana, and then we started, packaging some crystal methamphetamines. And I started selling some ecstasy, and then I started selling every drug you could possibly name. And through that, there was a lot of high-speed chases I was involved in. There was a lot of womanizing. Obviously that comes with a whole lot of territory with women and all. And then the party scene is what's really got deep. I started going into the Atlanta scene with the techno rave scene. If you know anything about this is a really deep electronic dance music scene, to where that it's a lifestyle where the parties go 2, 3, 4 weeks on end and they don't stop. And we would just go from house to house and just smoking meth and smoking every type of drug you can name, and then getting all geeked up on cocaine, and then smoking weed and taking Xanax to come down, and just like overdosing multiple times and flipping cars and flying off of cliffs, so eventually I would start to get into some criminal activities. This started criminal activity, but I would start to get in trouble for these activities. So I actually started getting some theft by taking charges and multiple burglaries and theft of services and grand theft autos and possessions and multiple high-speed chases, 150 miles an hour down 400. And not to just tell war stories, but it's pretty radical when you come down to where I'm at, that God actually blessed me with my life to allow me to continue living and not to be dismembered, not to be mentally challenged, and not to be sitting in prison the rest of my life, really. So I would end up going to 2 different counties in North Georgia, Forsyth County and Dawson County, at 18 years old. And I got sentenced to 15 years probation in one county and 15 years probation in another county, running concurrent on top of each other, and then sent out to West Georgia boot camp in Bremen. Before that, I went to juvenile boot camp and all this other stuff, RYDC. So I go through boot camp and I get out, and I'm like excited, marching around, showing people how I salute and all this, like I'm all disciplined now. But it wasn't very long before I got in another high-speed chase. I violated my probation, and they sentenced me to a year in the county jail. And then the year turned into 14 months, and they transferred me around from jail to jail to jail, from North Georgia down to Rice Street, Atlanta, all over Georgia, because I would raise so much crap. They had me in solitary confinement for about 6 months one time straight. I was just locked down the whole time, and truly thought I was mentally insane, and was diagnosed with a lot of stuff too. And I wanted the diagnosis. I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, bipolar, severe depression. Manic goes with bipolar as well. So just to kind of fast forward through the whole jail experience, there was around 35 times I was incarcerated. I was 35 times between here and Florida, and ultimately would do around 10 years in prison, in and out of different places. Three prison sentences in Georgia, and diversion centers, 3 boot camps, detention centers, halfway houses. I'll get to that in a second. And once I was started on 15 years probation, it kind of just started to be a reoccurring theme of where, Chaz would get out and he'd go right back in because he'd break some kind of law and he'd have to go face the probation violation. So I was just running. From everything, and got out of prison one time for my second stint in 2003, and took off, and I ran to Tampa Bay, Florida. So I ran to Tampa for 6 years, and absconded from felony probation. In Tampa, things really turned up. I got involved into a city called Ybor City down in the middle of 7th Avenue in Tampa, and it's you know where it's at? Yeah. And it's like Mardi Gras, like nonstop. I mean, it just don't stop year round. It's wild. And down there, we were literally one time we literally threw a party for like 3 weeks straight. I was so ate up on ecstasy. I was popping 10 beans at a time. I was overdosing. Ended up in the county jail, not knowing how I got there, with IVs running through my arms. Started to get back involved in the gang-related activities and carrying pistols and dealing drugs, and just lots of times I got jumped. Lots of times we jumped people. And then the relationships that I was involved with were not helping me to go in the right direction, obviously, and that was my choice. And just was in some really bad relationships, and where things that had happened when I was younger were started to be acted out on. So my dad passed away in 2005. All my grandparents, they passed away eventually. And then around 2007, 2008, that is when God really started to speak to me in different ways and occurrences, to where that prayers that I had prayed years before about God removing all the negative out of my life when it comes to people, places, and things. They say those are the triggers, right? He removed all the people out of my phone for me losing phones somehow or another. All the people that I had previously associated with that really caused stumbling blocks for me to go back into these places. And just really all the things that I surrounded myself with. It was a process. It really was a process. I'm telling you, I know some of us have been really deep into this life, like criminal activity and drugs and womanizing and partying. But it's like God can lift you up out of that, because He has a calling on your life. He can yank you up out of that, just straight up out of that deep bottomless pit, and He can pull you back up and elevate you into a different place. So, God has a calling on you, and maybe it doesn't cultivate the way it did for me, but throughout the course of my life, there was people planting seeds, whether it be Lorenzo or Fernando. I met him down in Dodge. Met him in Dodge State Prison, slept by him for a year, and He has a way of cultivating things in your life. So, 2007, 2008, I ended up getting out of a 3.5-year relationship with a girl that was just crazy. She was a stripper when I got with her. And I was like a bad drug dealer carrying guns and stuff. And then I decided to go up to a church because I needed Jesus. There was nothing else working. And I wasn't looking for a crutch. I knew who Jesus was. He was in my life. It's just I was stuffing him down, I was pushing him aside. So I went to a church there in Tampa, and started another process, another chapter in my life, to where that it was about really seeking God's face and surrounding myself with believers and people that would encourage me. And there was a lot of great friendships that came out of that, and things were really starting to go good. I was free for about 1.5 years, but for me, that is a massive victory, because before that was maybe 56 days. So I was free for 1.5 years, and I had a lot of great friends, and I was actually a manager for a home security company, and coming out of being a thief and having multiple burglaries, that's pretty crazy. So God can take what was bad and make it good. And I got a condo, I had a kitty cat, I had a computer, I had things going, like a racing bike. And then there's one thing I kind of forgot about, maybe two, that I had 15 years probation running in 2 different counties in Georgia. So, there was one county, Forsyth County, because when I was in Tampa, I got locked up 18 times. I mean, for all kinds of stuff. And every time I get locked up, they'd be like, you have a felony fugitive from justice warrant up in Georgia. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm pretty much aware of that. They said just basically don't come back to the state, which that never happens, right? If you're on a felony, you're coming back if you get a new charge. And then I was out in the neighborhood knocking on doors one day doing home security cells, and I had a team of about 6 people that I was training. And a neighbor, one of the homeowners, they actually called the police. We get that sometimes for solicitation. And the officer came out and he said, let me see you guys' IDs. We're going to, basically just check you out. We get this all the time. People like to call the cops if you knock on their door. He came back and he said, Mr. Parks, come put your hands on the back of the cop car. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I go over there, and remember, it's been 1.5 years, so I'm kind of I still have some flashbacks and stuff, but I've got away from it. And he's like, you know what this is for? I said, Forsyth County, Georgia? Because, that was non-extraditable for so many years. And he's like, no, it's for Dawson County, Georgia. They found out you fell through the cracks for 6 years, and they want to bring you back up to Georgia and for you to face all these charges, 20 different lockups. So I come back in a cop car, and I lost everything I had. And the cop car I drove back up, and it was about a 10-hour drive. It was 2 officers I used to run from on high-speed chases back in the days, over a decade ago. And one of the officers said, I was telling him my testimony, and he was blown away. He's like, wow, man, God has did an awesome transformation in your life, but that doesn't mean He's going to potentially be using you on the streets. You may be serving in the penitentiary. And his words eventually would be true. So I went to Dawson County, and we go through the procedure, and I had friends come in from Florida and all over the place. And the judge ended up sentencing me to 30 days in the county jail and terminating the rest of the 15 years of probation. So I was obviously like, praise the Lord Jesus. So I do my little 30 days, and now I go over to Forsyth County, because you remember I had 15 years running concurrent. So I'm almost free, and then I go into Forsyth County, and the judge sentenced me to 9 years, 1 month, 10 days in prison. So I go back in, like I'm freaking out, I'm shell shocked, like I'm in the holding cell. All my friends are up here from Tampa, my landlords, everyone's out there waiting on me to get out. But I'm going to do 10 years in prison. And I'm like, this is not that big of a deal. Like, I never killed anybody, never raped anyone or nothing like that. But I took off and I absconded from probation, and he had to uphold the law, and he could do that. So he ended up giving me the rest of my probation in prison, which should have maxed out in April 2014, but he tacked on 6 years while I was on the run. What's that called, where they stop your probation? I can't remember, but anyway, they stopped the probation, tolling order. They did a tolling order. Like, they stopped it and they ran it back on top. So I go back into Forsyth County Jail, and God, like all this stuff that I did not want to be a part of again. The bunks were like that close together in the county jail, and triple stacked. And the bottom, you couldn't even like sit up. And it was just on and popping again. It was like, I was in county jail for like 8 or 9 months, sitting there and going through all of that. Like at the end of that, I was like, please send me to Jackson. I want to go to prison so bad right now, and that's bad. Because county jail is like drag action, for real. And I go down to Jackson, start going through this, and get shipped off to Rogers State Prison, and made some bad decisions. I got a flop, a cell phone, and I got robbed for it. I ended up getting robbed for it. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't roll with anybody. So I got robbed, and it was a learning lesson. Like, you don't break rules, obviously, and I about lost my life, for real. Like, there were shanks like this big. You know how it is. They were like that big right there, dude. But I mean, it was a tough situation, because they ended up shipping me out of the camp, and then actually went off to Dodge State Prison, where I ran into this guy. So we ended up doing like Bible studies like every single day. He had to deal with my attitude sometimes. I wasn't always in the best mental state in there. I mean, it's a tough time for me, It's tough for us sometimes in these places. But really just started to disciple with him and hang out. He was like as loyal as a brother could be, and just running around the yard like 5-10 miles a day. He was skinny as heck. Couldn't gain any weight hanging around with him. We just really fellowshiped a lot, and I started growing much more in the Lord. But we eventually would have to separate ways and, go to different camps. And I got sent off to Clayton Transitional Center in Forest Park. So about 2.5 years on my bid. I ended up getting the 6 years rolled back, and they gave me 6 years off of my sentence. Go to the transitional center and start to compromise again. I'm like, I'm pretty much 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So like it's cool if I go to Starbucks and hang out and get some coffee. Because you have 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back. I'm like, it's okay if I go on over here and go to LA Fitness and work out and get my swole on. And then I went and started doing some photo shoots and some modeling and different things like this. And then one girl, she was like, hey, you should go check out my church sometime on a Sunday. I'm like, all right. So I'll go check it out. She said, have you ever heard of Chris Tomlin and Louis Giglio? I'm like, I've heard of Chris Tomlin, but Louis Giglio, not so much. She said, come on a Sunday. So I made it appear as if I was going to work that day, and I went to Passion City Church. And that's in Buckhead. So I went up there, and it was like the 5 p.m. gathering, and I went up there, and I was in the front row, like in the Department of Corrections, praising Jesus, like in the front of this like mega church. So like for me, I was just like, this is amazing, like I'm on fire. And ended up having a kid. He got popped with a cell phone in the transitional center, and they ended up linking it back into his Facebook, seeing where I'd been posting my location on Facebook. Don't do that, ever. Like, don't do that. Don't be friends with anybody you're in here if you're on Facebook. But anyway, so like I come back to Clayton Transitional Center one night, and they have the computer turned around right here, and they have a picture of me in like my photo shoot. So I'm like, what's up? What time is it? Where's the hole? So we go ahead and they send me the hole, and then I go straight on back to Phillips Prison. Phillips State Prison. I go to Phillips State Prison. I probably didn't brush my teeth for 5 days. I couldn't get a toothbrush or toothpaste, and they decided to go ahead and send me back down south. So I go down to Dooley State Prison, and in Dooley State Prison, down there just kind of like throwed off. I'm like, dude, I got like probably like another year. I don't want to go and do another year now. And then through that, I ended up getting plugged in with a ministry there and going to church like every single day. And they had a choir. They had a choir there, the Voices of Praise. So the Voices of Praise I would audition for. I made it in the first tenor, which was really difficult. And started leading some worship, singing some songs and covering some Chris Tomlin, Michael W. Smith, and some Jeremy Camp. And then these guys came in. Some of these guys came in. And one of the guys was this guy, Lorenzo King. So we met in prison, and he impacted my life from inside of the prison. And eventually I would get out. So eventually I would get out in March 14th of 2013. And I was wanting to go back to Tampa Bay, Florida, because that's where I was living. So the probation officer's like, nope, you can't do that for at least 6 months. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and find me a place in Buckhead, and I did. I started selling home security systems again. I didn't make excuses. I didn't have a car. I haven't had a license since I was 16 and just got it a year ago. So I didn't make excuses. I would literally carry a backpack with my food prepared in the backpack. It was one of those camel packs with the water bladders so you can drink water. And I would take the bus and get dropped off in the middle of a neighborhood and go knock doors. And I'm 100% commission. It's difficult to do without a car. But I went in, I was so like fired up. I just wanted to be successful, but I just had that never say die attitude. I was a go-getter, and I wouldn't stop. And eventually that kind of was a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be. And it was cold up in Atlanta, Georgia. So I ended up going back into the fine dining industry and plugging back in with Passion City Church and just having like this massive growth here last year. And so I've been free about two and a half years, and so where I'm at now is just it's a really great place. Things aren't perfect, and it's definitely a battle that you're going to deal with. You have to like really want it. I think it's like 65-70% recidivism, something like that. I mean, I just want to encourage you guys, like when you get out, you have to plug in with a church. I mean, you're here in this church, but you have to be involved with the ministry. You have to be involved with people that are in the church, and not all of them are going to accept you, trust me. And you'll wonder why, but it's like, you'll feel like a leper walking through the church sometimes. You're like, these people don't understand me, but you have to really want it. You can't go and involve yourself back in the same things like the party scene. Drinking, don't do it, because there's other people that need to hear your story. There's other people that could be on the brink of actually having their breakthrough because they have your testimony coming through to them. So that's it, man. I'm blessed to be here. Thank you so much.
I'll give it up to you. Awesome. There's something about just simply hearing a testimony, and there's a lot that he's been through. And so I want you to know that God is no respecter of person, and that God can still do the same thing for you in restoring your life back into relational wholeness with God, with the family, with the community, and with everybody. So that's why it's important to stay connected, to stay plugged up. And when you're connected and plugged up, it gives you the ability to be able to maintain your sanity. Because you will be tested on every level, but the thing is that you have the power and the ability when you're connected to God. Being connected to God is the thing that allows you to really be able to make it. So I want us just to pray for a moment.
Everyone on earth, and you are the universe, you are, yeah, you are.